Hello and welcome to Business Reporter's Future of the Supply Chain campaign. I'm Alistair Greener. 200 Fortune 500 companies have Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers in Wuhan, the ground zero of the COVID-19 pandemic. Hundreds of thousands of other businesses came to a standstill when first China, then the whole world went into lockdown and supply chains stopped functioning. Most of us expect empathy and government support in the midst of such a black swan event. Black swans are used as an analogy for an imagined crisis we haven't met yet. But we have learned that sooner or later we will meet black swans. Is the economic impact of the coronavirus a crisis, or just the kind of hardship we've seen before? Can we prepare and build resilience for the next time such events threaten us? This is what we're going to discuss today with Alan Rafiq and Nick Martin from Market Dojo. Good morning.
Good morning.
How would you define the challenges in the supply chain during the current pandemic of COVID-19? Would you call it crisis or just major disruption?
Well, Alistair, I'd probably just say it was a challenge. And you can have the continuity of supply. It doesn't have to be an impossible situation. And with all challenges, there are solutions. With access to the right data, companies can react quickly to manage their risk and their costs. Procurement are the new heroes of organisations with the ability to save cash when sales are dropping.
You say it's a challenge, but this pandemic has often been called unprecedented. This is something completely different. Yet, would you say there are any examples that organisations could have used to help them prepare for this current pandemic?
Yes, I think there are. 2008 financial crisis, Brexit, the Great Depression of the 1930s, Spanish flu, they're all examples of events which look cataclysmic at the time, but we've come through them. I think what's important is that we learn from this and make sure we're better prepared in the future. So, for example, for many years before COVID, the number one risk on the UK's National Risk Register was a flu pandemic. But when COVID came along, we quickly discovered that not all the preparation was quite as well in place as it should have been.
The fact that it was number one on their register, why did so many organisations and companies not take the precautions that one would have thought they would have done?
Well, that's a great question. Proactive procurement professionals have evolved, but procurement departments as a whole haven't changed significantly. This is very different from Brexit and the 2008 financial meltdown. This has affected every consumer across the globe without discrimination, and that shockwave has been felt up every supply chain to affect every company. Now is the time for companies to adopt the right tools to protect themselves for the future.
You talk about the tools, so let's look at what organisations can do. Obviously, there's more visibility in the supply chain, there's risk modelling, there's assessments. An organisation who wants to prepare is probably asking, well, where do I start?
I would say start with the data and then make sure you can take effective action based on that data. So for our customers, data comes from two main locations. So firstly, your internal data. So for example, the contracts that you have with your suppliers, look at those. And then external data. So take a look at your supply chain. Do you understand it? Where are the suppliers located? Things of that nature. Once you've got the data, you then need to make sure that you've got the right tools to make sense of it and take action based on that data.
Let's say I'm an organisation that decides to take on board what you're suggesting. Give me 3 changes that I should be making to turn this crisis into a manageable problem.
Well, based on what we've seen, I'd say number one would be optimising your cash flow. Secondly, looking at collaboration both internally and externally. And lastly, I'd say supply chain resilience.
Now, with those 3 changes, give us an idea of where Market Dojo fits into all of this. Where do you help?
Well, at Market Dojo, we truly believe in a better way to manage your data, mitigate your risks, and minimise your costs outside of emails and spreadsheets. Essentially to master supply chain decisions, and we have some very easy to use on-demand software. We help companies with running tenders online, managing their contracts, or ensuring supplier compliance through onboarding. Some of our clients include Paddy Power, Logitech, Metroline, Agreco. We're very proud to have those clients. I mean, with respect to cash, maybe Nick can answer that one.
Yeah, in tough times, cash is king. We can help companies to preserve cash. Some examples of that is through understanding your contracts. You can look at ways to reduce the costs there, and also by a better understanding of your supply chain, you can work more closely with your suppliers to save money.
Secondly, on collaboration, virtual teams are the new norm now, and they need online tools. And through the use of these tools, you can communicate better internally with stakeholders, and you can also work with your suppliers on collaborative, innovative initiatives, for example.
And then thirdly, supply chain resilience. So when you've got a great understanding of your supply chain, you can start to be more resilient in that supply chain. So, well, if you've got a supplier in China and you recognise that there's going to be an interruption to that supply from China, you can look at alternative sources of supply. So perhaps adopt a nearshoring strategy where you're buying goods from closer to home, and then very quickly, by understanding the suppliers that are available, you can implement that strategy and track it properly.
You say that cash is king. Give me an idea of what that actually looks like in practice.
So procurement teams, one of their objectives will be to reduce the costs for the things that they supply. So one place that a lot of our customers start is with a simple reverse auction. So they'll be buying some product, goods or services from a location, and they will want to reduce the amount of money that that's costing them to buy. So through using a reverse auction, they can very quickly introduce competition into their suppliers and find the best price available. And that will have an immediate effect on the bottom line by reducing the cost of the thing that they're actually making. For example, we work with automotive manufacturers, and they buy millions of widgets that go into their cars, plastic fasteners, for example. And so through using Market Dojo, they've been able to find a cheaper source of those millions of widgets. And the individual reduction in cost of each one is actually quite small, but when you add that up, the number of widgets that they're actually buying, it amounts to millions of pounds.
I think on that OEM manufacturer, they spent £500 for a month license, and they saved 50 million on a 5-year contract of non-metallic fasteners. But even though it's an extreme example, it's not unusual for a client to spend £500 and save 10-20% on their goods or services.
Given the lack of preparedness for this last pandemic, how optimistic do you feel about the future, that organisations are willing and able to make the changes required?
Our customers, proactive procurement professionals, recognise these opportunities, and I think they're ready to take advantage of them. This is actually a great opportunity for a part of the organisation that can have such a direct effect on the profitability of organisations. So we are very optimistic about it. And there's a quote from Andy Grove, former CEO of Intel, which I really like. He said that bad companies are destroyed by crises, good companies survive them, and great companies are actually improved by them.
Alan Rafiq, Nick Martin from Market Dojo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.